First off, thank you very much for having me here. Steve Jobs, founder of Apple, has many very profound quotes. One that means a lot to me and is, we can't connect the dots looking forward, we can only connect them looking back. And I think most everyone can relate to that, because at some point in your life, things happen and you don't know why. And for a long period of time after, sometimes you don't know why. And you look back and it starts to make sense. And interestingly enough, at your get-together last night, somebody brought up the word empathy. And it triggered something in me. And these dots continue to go back more and more and more in the past. That trigger took me back to 8th grade, of all places, where I had an English teacher that taught us, not that type of English, who taught us the word empathy. And she said, this is going to be one of the most, this word will mean the most to you in your life if you learn it and you truly believe in it and you understand it. And last night when we were at the get-together and the word empathy was brought up, I thought, wow, there's a lot of truth to that. I mean, you remember little nuggets of things throughout your life that mean something like that. And that word empathy, and really understanding where others are coming from and walking in their shoes, has a lot of meaning in this community with mental health. A year later, I wasn't connecting the dots this far back until last night, of all things. A year later, I ended up in special reading class in 9th grade because I had the comprehension of a 3rd grader. And it's because I never took the test seriously. I'm dead serious. I used to fill in the dots. And I wanted to be the first one done. So my dad in the school put me in special reading, of all things. And in 9th grade, I had this special reading class, but they taught comprehension through music. And this was 40 years ago. And I don't remember, this is 9 weeks of school. I remember one of the songs, but it's a song by James Taylor. It's called Fire and Rain. Many of you are familiar with it. And Fire and Rain is about 3 different things, but one of the verses is actually about suicide. He had a childhood friend that died. Her name was Suzanne, died from suicide. And the verse goes something like, I've seen fire, I've seen rain. I've seen sunny days that I thought would never end. I've seen lonely times where I could not find a friend, but I always thought that I'd see you again. And that song has stuck with me over the years, only because it was the one in that 9-week period that I paid so much attention to. And to this day, that was hard for me to say, the last sentence of that verse. I always thought I'd see you again. And I lost my brother almost 10 years ago to suicide. But the story doesn't really start with that event. It starts 10 years ago last month, Friday, August 10th. I was in downtown Mount Dora. So many of us frequent local businesses, and there's a police officer sitting there, of all things. No, it's fine. I had 2.5 glasses of wine, minding my own business. Thank God I had stopped drinking an hour earlier, and driving home. Right about on 19, where the VFW and the Big Dog Saloon is, 2 guys ran across the road in front of me at an angle. And if anybody's been on that road at night, it's pitch black. I locked eyes with it. That's how close they were. I locked eyes with the 2 guys running. They were looking over their shoulder. I thought they were looking at me because I could literally see their eyes. Right about then, out of my peripheral vision, a 3rd guy appeared in the center of the hood of my pickup truck. I hit him. I could still see him looking at me. I hit him. He went over the hood of my truck, down the side. I understand completely why people say they leave the scene. Thankfully for me, I pulled over, I turned around, and I went back. I rolled down my window, and the kids said, "You hit him, I think he's dead." Mount Dora police showed up. Thankfully, the fire department is literally right around the corner. And of all police officers, I get a police officer that said, "Look, I was in a similar accident a year ago. I hit a pedestrian, I killed him. Probably in shock right now. Take a deep breath." And he started his investigation that lasted almost 2 hours. In the middle of that investigation, after many interactions with him, the helicopter was there, everything, he said, "Did you have anything to drink?" I said, "Yeah, I had almost 3 glasses of wine." And you could tell he was just exasperated because he was shocked, I think, even then, because he didn't even realize it. So everybody had gone except the police officers, and he said, "I need to have somebody come back and draw your blood. Do you consent to that?" And I said, "Yeah, absolutely." They came back, they drew my blood, and let me drive home. That next Monday, I'm doing things I never thought I would do in my life. I'm looking for a criminal defense attorney. I'm talking to friends that I know that are judges saying, "Hey, look, what am I in for here?" And they're telling me, "Well, if the guy dies, it could be this. If your blood alcohol is 0.05 or greater, it could be this." And it was devastating. The third thing that Monday that I started to seek out was a counselor. And that counselor ended up being Isaac Deas, who spoke earlier today. Isaac and I, that 10 years ago, formed a friendship over these years. But as an incredible counselor, I wanted a Christian counselor at the time. And I'd never met Isaac. I had heard things about him. I'd seen him at events. And he became my counselor. During this, my brother, Mike, who has since passed away, I'm talking to him about it. And I'm telling him, I'm like, "Mike, I'm having like PTSD. If I go to sleep at night, these dreams wake me up. I see this guy over and over in accidents, And he's like, "Oh, PTSD, there's no such thing. Man up, you're a wuss." So I was pretty upset with him. Didn't speak to him for about a month. I'm at breakfast one morning, I get a text from my brother Mike, and he says, "Hey, maybe PTSD is real. I need to talk to you." So with my sarcasm, my first text back was, "What, did you read a book?" So I called him back, literally stepped outside, and he said, "I see Becky everywhere I go." Now, Becky was Mike's fiance that passed away from cancer February of that year. So 7 months earlier, she had passed away of cancer. And he said, "Joe, if I'm driving down the road, she's sitting next to me in the truck. If I walk downstairs, she's laying on the couch. When I roll over, she's laying next to me in bed." And at first, I didn't know what to say. But I realized he was in a bad place with this. And tried to get him counseling, and he just wouldn't go. His solution was to go to a medical doctor because he couldn't sleep. So those doctors gave him Ambien. And Ambien for my brother was a horrible mix because my brother was an alcoholic. So he mixed a lot of alcohol with Ambien, and it just perpetuated this cycle that he was in. Being a person like I am, where I try to figure out, a way to fix it quick, he lived in Wisconsin. I wanted him to move here. "Hey, Mike, I have a place for you. Move to Florida. You can come to work for me." He was an intelligent guy, business-minded. "You come to work for me. You come to work for me. I'll make a position for you. I have a place for you to live." That's a great idea. This went on for months. And in March, first off, in my accident, the guy lived. He sued me for $2 million. It went through Ended up being settled, but it was a nightmare with the insurance company. But that's the end of that chapter of it. Yeah, so, pardon me? The attorney asked him that, actually, in one of the depositions. He had quite a bit to drink. Had been drinking since 3 o'clock that day. So, but that's the way the insurance system works with ambulance chasers. So in March of that year, I was in a meeting in downtown Eustis. This after months of going to therapy with Isaac, and I was in a meeting. My phone was in my truck. I left the meeting. I'm driving up Bay Street, and I have a bunch of missed calls, 6 or 7 if I remember right, and none of which I recognize, but I recognize the area code. So I picked the first one, and missed calls today versus 10 years ago, a little different. Now it's like, you don't ever call them back, you don't answer them, Called one of them back, and it was a detective. He was in my brother's house. This was a Thursday. And he said, I'm at your brother's house. And before he could even get the words out of his mouth, I said to him, did my brother take his own life? He said, why do you ask? And I said, well, and I told him the story with Becky and some things that I'd been experiencing with him. But I have to tell you, I never saw it coming. I just didn't realize that it was to that extreme. I just talked to him 3 days earlier about moving to Florida. I had talked to him via text the night before about buying his daughter a car for graduation here locally because she was getting ready to go to college. So to think that, I never saw it coming. This was a Thursday. He'd been dead since Tuesday morning. My brother shot himself with a 30-06 in the head, of all things. That morning, he apparently got up. I had his phone that I got back from the police department. He got up, he called all of his work contacts and rescheduled appointments with them for the next week. Guys that he was supposed to go fishing with on Friday, he said, hey, I'm busy this weekend. Let's go next weekend instead. A trip he was supposed to go on to Texas, I saw him text somebody, said, hey, I can't come there in 2 weeks. I'm thinking maybe next month now. Somewhere between 8 o'clock that morning and then 10:30, those texts stopped about 10 o'clock. So in that next hour window, he shot himself. But he was that methodical in planning and diverting other people to do so right before he did it. And to this day, that's just an unknown. He lived in a 2-story home with a basement, and I know where the gun cabinet was. So at some point, he got a gun cabinet out upstairs, laid the case on the bed where it was, and walked down 2 flights of steps to shoot himself. And those are the things that haunt you because you never know what was going through their mind at the time. But I remember my next session with Isaac, I go in, and Isaac, like any counselor, kind of recap where you were, where you're at. I said, I'm not here to talk about that. My brother shot himself. And the look on the guy's face was, and that began a journey for me that has now lasted 9.5 years. I will say that the first 5 years of that were pure hell. I had nightmares at least once a week. I had faceless characters that would speak to me where I couldn't wake myself up out of the nightmare, where he was standing next to my bed trying to tell me something and I couldn't wake up from it. I've been woken up from my sleep from having these horrible nightmares where I would scream in my sleep. I had many, many sleepless nights over it. And then it slowly starts to ease. Right after that, I got involved with a local organization, did a lot of their fundraising and their local galas. If anybody that's been in this network knows any of who Kevin Hines is, Kevin Hines jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge and lived, and he's a national speaker. Had him here locally 3 years ago. He spoke at the Livestream Gala. It was the largest gala they ever had. They raised over $100,000 that year with Kevin here as the speaker, as the headliner. But the angst I always had was I never knew where the money was going. I raised money and I donated money, and my friends donated money, and businesses associated with my company donated money. But I never could account. I wanted this one-to-one accountability with money to where I wanted to know that it was truly going for awareness and prevention and helping people, and wanted to be able to see what it was doing to help people. So I ended up severing ties with that organization and kind of wandered aimlessly for a couple of years, not doing anything. And if anybody remembers, I don't remember them as much in Florida because at the time I traveled with my job, and I remember seeing them a lot in Georgia and Tennessee. But if you remember the billboards where it would be some saying and it would say, God, on the billboard. And I got this idea driving one day. I thought, I'm going to take all my company billboards. It was one October. I'm going to change them all over to a message for mental health. So I changed one. The one that got the attention of the media was one over by Gator Harley. And I changed it, but it had a picture of my brother Mike and his daughter Kara walking down a fishing pier when she was younger. And I can't remember if they're holding hands or if one has a fishing pole, one has a tackle box, but it's just the back of them. And it said across the top of the billboards, "You thought I'd be better off without you. I'm not. Your daughter, Kara Jo." And that billboard got a lot of attention locally. And it became the catalyst for me to say, okay, I need to do something else, because I realized there's a true need here. West 2 News came to my office. They wanted to talk to me about the billboard. The guy happened to be up here on another news story and saw the billboard and called the office wanting to know the backstory of it. And I decided to start the M.I.K.E. Endowment. So the acronym M.I.K.E., which was my brother's name, stands for Mental Illness and Kindness Endowment. And when I originally started the endowment, I kicked it off funding it with my own money, like I do with most things. And then when I wrote the documents, I wrote that I would just do it to support like-minded organizations around the area. I'm always kind of a behind-the-scenes guy. I don't do much of this. I donate. The treasure of what I've been able to do personally is, build my own personal wealth to the point where I realize that, instead of donating a lot of money to a few organizations, you can make a huge difference in a community by donating a little bit to change somebody's life, whether it's $50 to a homeless person or $500 or $1,000 to an organization. It's life-changing to a lot of organizations, and you lose touch with that as wealth grows around you sometimes, and I've tried to stay very grounded with that. So in the beginning, I was taking in the money, and I didn't really have any like-minded organizations that I could find to donate the money to at the time. And then COVID hit, 6 months after I started the M.I.K.E. Endowment. And I'm driving down the road, and I keep getting people reach out to me for counseling. And I didn't want to provide them with Livestream, because to me, Livestream was a little polarizing within the community. It's more associated, at least from my perspective, although I'd done a lot with them, with people didn't want to go there. So I wanted a place to be able to help people, and they wanted to go back. And after dozens of folks would reach out to me, I'm driving and I thought, well, who better to do this than the guy that helped me? So I remember where I was. I was outside of a restaurant here in Eustis, 6 o'clock on a Friday evening, and I texted Isaac Deas and said, hey, give me a call. I have an idea. Calls me up, and I said, here's the idea I've got. I've got to walk through it a little bit, work through it, but I want to offer free counseling. And I don't mean you do it for free, but I'll reimburse you for it. But I just need somebody that I have the confidence in to where we can put people in front of you and we can help them. And we can get them back on the right track, whether it's pointing them to other resources or just giving them the ability to speak to someone that has empathy and understands and cares and is compassionate about people to the point where they want to see them move past where they are right now. And to date, our M.I.K.E. Endowment and my partnership with Isaac, and this has been 2 years next month that we've done it, has helped over 550 people here just in Lake County with free mental health counseling. And, you know, we don't kind of silo ourselves just into the mental health. Quite frankly, if people reach out and they have other needs, you know, he'll reach out and say, hey, I've got this person. Do you know, I give you an example. And most people know it that live in the area. There was a horrible murder in Mount Dora of the folks that owned the Vietnamese market in Mount Dora, and it left behind 2 sons. And those boys, one was a little older and one was maybe 13, 14, I can't remember exactly. The older son saw his father shot in the hospital, called me, and described it to me. I talked to him for about an hour on the phone one night, and that kid, as traumatic as it was for him, said, I don't need help, but I need my little brother to get some help. So those 2 kids have a blank check. They go whenever they need to go to Isaac, and I don't care how many sessions it is. They're in, you know, that it's just been horrible, and it's never been solved. You know, I reach out to them every once in a while, and, you know, it's a very unfortunate situation, very unfortunate situation. So, you know, there's multiple, you know, mental health can be intertwined in so many things, whether it's domestic violence, sex abuse, divorce, you know, can trigger so many different things. So, you know, I don't want it to just be, I'm suicidal, okay, here, go see Isaac. If they need help, we don't want to turn them away, because we don't want to turn people away. But 550 people is just unbelievable to me in the last 2 years. So the partnerships that we form within our communities, I think sometimes, this goes back to connecting those dots. It's just amazing to me when I look back and realize then that the next dot, you know, was Elaine a year ago. You know, we meet over coffee. My memory's horrible anymore. Oh, that's right, we met in my office. Okay, that's right. Yeah, we met in my office because we went over coffee one other time. So met in my office, and I did. I remember challenging her because I thought, my gosh, you know, $10,000. It reminded me of, you know, some of the other talks where you've got to do a license and things like that, and do your own. Don't take this $10,000 and use it for something else, and I'll help you get there. So that's how we ended up, you know, to a degree where she took that from that and ended up where we are today. And, you know, 2 years from now, you're going to be able to look back and see other dots that have connected. And it is amazing how, again, people of empathy all come together and really unite when it comes to helping others. You know, I truly believe, as divisive as this world is anymore, that there's truly more good in this world than there is bad. You know, unfortunately, we all hear about the bad, and the bad is just so much more loud than the good is, because the good are in rooms like this helping people. We're the silent ones. But I'll leave you with this, and was off the cuff in an interview one time on a video for the M.I.K.E. Endowment. Someone asked me, I don't even remember the question, but I said, if you have the ability to make a difference, you have an obligation to make a difference. And that doesn't have to be what I typically do, which is monetary. You know, it could be, you know, holding a door for somebody, you know, smiling at somebody can change their trajectory in life. The way that we treat others, the time that we give, an ear that we give, a hug that we give, all of those things, we all have those abilities within ourselves to make a difference. So I leave you with that we all go out from here to make a difference in the community. So, thank you. Thank you, ladies.